Boyfriend banned me from my best friend's wedding because my ex is the best man. Now I need a plan to change his mind. My boyfriend Jake and I have been together for 2 years now, and we actually met during university orientation. Our relationship has been wonderful. He's kind, funny, and supportive. He's already met my best friend, Ella, who is getting married soon to her longtime boyfriend, Luke. Ella and Luke are absolute high school sweethearts. Their story together is legendary among our group, and I've adored both of them for years. We all grew up together, hanging out through high school, and witnessing their relationship grow stronger. Back in high school, I only dated one other person, Sam. Sam and I spent 3 years together, and it was one of those swoony young loves where you dream together about the future, about uni, maybe even about getting married one day. But when university acceptance letters arrived, Sam had to move out of state, and as much as it hurt, we drifted apart and eventually broke up. We haven't seen each other in about 3 years. When Ella asked me to be her maid of honor, I was over the moon. She and I dove into wedding planning together, picking bouquets and venues, as Luke finalized his own groomsmen lineup. I was honestly caught off guard when Ella mentioned that Sam would be Luke's best man. Apparently, Luke and Sam have stayed pretty close over the years, though I haven't really kept up beyond the occasional "is he good" when I see Luke. I told Jake about it, wanting to be open, and he immediately tensed. He wasn't enthusiastic at all about the idea of me being paired up with Sam for all the bridesmaid/groomsmen activities at the wedding, things like walking down the aisle, sharing the first dance, all the big wedding party photos. Jake said it made him uncomfortable to think about me sharing those moments with my ex, especially since the wedding party would be doing couple-like activities together. He also worried about feeling out of place seeing pictures of the wedding party where it would be me and Sam together, pictures that would inevitably end up around Ella and Luke's home, so every time we visited he'd be reminded that he wasn't there. I tried to reassure Jake, explaining that Sam is ancient history for me and we haven't even spoken in years. I told him I would absolutely spend most of my time with him at the wedding, and that he is my priority. But Jake still felt uneasy. He said the idea of watching me walk down the aisle or dance with someone else even just as part of the wedding party bothered him, and the thought of the wedding photos being displayed where he'd see them didn't help either. After hearing everyone's thoughts on the situation and reflecting a bit, I realized a couple of things needed clarifying. First, it really wasn't a shock that Sam was chosen by Luke as best man. Despite my lack of interest in Sam's current life, Luke and he have stayed close, and frankly, I barely even ask about Sam anymore, just the casual "how's he doing?" and that's it. Also, when I mentioned before about pictures being plastered all over Ella and Luke's house, I don't mean photos of just Sam and me, I mean group photos of the entire wedding party. Jake just feels strange knowing he wouldn't be in those pictures, almost like there's an alternate version of our friend group in those frames, a side of my life that doesn't include him. Jake isn't a controlling person, he's only ever dated one other person before me, while I only had Sam before him. He just doesn't like the idea of those photos, knowing he won't be in them, thinking it makes it look like he wasn't there and wasn't a part of that memory. Tomorrow, I'm planning to sit down and have an honest talk with Jake about all of this, to see if we can reach a solution that feels good for both of us. Maybe I can reassure him, or maybe we can find a compromise. And just to clarify, at Ella and Luke's wedding, the bride and groom have the dance floor to themselves for just the first song, then the parents join in, and then the bridesmaids and groomsmen are pulled in about halfway through the dance. So, it isn't too intimate, but I totally see why it would still bother Jake. I'll let you all know how the conversation goes and what we decide. That talk started off shaky. He argued with me about it, definitely wasn't thrilled, but in the end, he agreed to come to the wedding. I think what really nudged him was him admitting he'd rather be there to celebrate Ella and Luke than sit at home imagining me having fun while he was alone. He struggles with anxiety and hates feeling left out, so I tried to be empathetic. But 2 weeks have passed, and things have gotten worse. At first, he was sweeter than ever, acting like the boyfriend every girl dreams of. But it felt different. Off, almost. Like he was angling for me to praise him, dropping comments and little jokes about how great he was, hoping I wouldn't forget. I started to feel like he was using guilt to keep me close. Then, after reflecting on what people had warned me about, I started noticing his questions. He always wanted to know exactly where I was, who I was seeing. That wasn't really new, but now it felt possessive. When I'd text, he'd asked who it was and what we were talking about, even looking over my shoulder to read messages. We'd always had each other's phone passwords, but suddenly it felt invasive, like he was checking up on me rather than trusting me. Then things escalated more. Whenever I went out, he would ask me to update him. Not just have fun. Message he wanted a rundown of every shop I visited, everything I ate. He asked for photos of my food. At first, I thought it was sweet, like he wanted to be with me even when he couldn't be, so I sent him the pictures and updates he wanted. After a couple of days though, I realized how ridiculous that was and got sick of it. When I asked why he needed all that info, he just said, "Just want to make sure." Make sure of what? He never really answered. Then, about 2 days ago, we had another fight. This time, it was about Ella. He accused her of manipulating me, of trying to get me back together with Sam. He said Ella always had it out for him. That's when I snapped and told him he was being ridiculous. If that were true, why would she invite him to her wedding in the first place? He then said he didn't want me to go to the wedding, that if I did, I'd be crossing his boundaries, and I wouldn't be his girlfriend anymore because what kind of girlfriend would purposely cross her boyfriend's boundaries? That was a breaking point for me. I told him fine, I wouldn't cross his boundaries, and I ended things right then. Looking back, everything I tried to rationalize was just him trying to control me. Now, I'm left with this deep sadness, this sense that I wasted years loving someone who didn't want to see me bloom, just shrank my world down to fit his needs. I told Ella what happened. She didn't cheer or celebrate, she just felt sad for me too. She said he was nice, but I deserved better and should be with someone who wants to help me grow, not someone who tries to keep me, all to himself. So now, I'm focusing on being at the wedding, helping Ella however I can, and looking forward instead of back. The advice and support I've gotten genuinely mean the world to me. And funnily enough, I definitely see now that sometimes, the right answer really is to walk away. Even though I once rolled my eyes at the breakup. Vice, I get it now. If it had stopped at just an argument and a little sulking, maybe things would have been different. But boundaries shouldn't be used as weapons or as tools to monitor the person you love. Now, I'm a proud supporter of making the hard choice when it means choosing myself. Update 2. I didn't sleep the night before the rehearsal. I kept picturing the walk, the photos, the way my stomach would probably knot up the first time I saw Sam again. And then I actually saw him, and it was normal. He hugged me the way you hug someone you used to know really well, careful and warm, and immediately made a stupid joke about not tripping on the steps because I peaked athletically at 17. His girlfriend, Maya, was there, and she was lovely, funny, sharp, the type who remembers everyone's names in 5 minutes. She teased him about his too tight tie and he blushed, and I felt this wash of relief that surprised me in its size. Whatever I thought I needed to prepare myself for wasn't here. We were just two people in nice clothes trying to get through poses without blinking. The morning of the wedding, hair rollers and coffee cups everywhere, I got a flower delivery. No sender on the little card at first glance. I thought it was from Ella, until I flipped it and saw Jake's handwriting. "I'm outside. Please talk to me." My stomach dropped. I handed the card to Ella without saying anything. She didn't make a face, just pressed her lips together and said, "Okay. We're calling the coordinator." Within 10 minutes, the venue manager and Luke had a plan. They told security to keep an eye on the entrance and to escort anyone not on the list back to the street. It wasn't dramatic in the room, no gaspies, no panic, just a quiet reshuffling, like someone moving a fragile vase to a higher shelf. I didn't see him before the ceremony. If he was there, he stayed far enough away that I never caught a glimpse. I focused on zipping dresses, buttoning the little pearl buttons down Ella's back, and the way her hand shook when I handed her the bouquet. I whispered, "You look like the person I always knew you'd be," and her eyes went watery and soft, and suddenly everything else was background noise. Walking down the aisle with Sam was easier than breathing. We laughed under our breath about how Luke's uncle winked at every single bridesmaid, and when the photographer told us to lean in like you share a secret, we did, and the secret was just that the grass was eating my heel and he was holding me up by the arm. During the group photos, Maya joined us for a few and slid her arm through mine like we always known each other. It was nice. It was ordinary. The kind of ordinary that felt like a gift. My maid of honor speech had been rewritten in my head a dozen times. I cut anything that sounded like a TED talk and kept the part about how loving someone isn't about possessiveness, it's about making more room for each other's lives. I told a story about Ella teaching me to parallel park in her mom's car, even though neither of us had any business doing that, and everyone laughed and then cried in the right places. When I sat down, Sam squeezed my shoulder and said, "You did good," and Maya winked at me over her glass. Then the DJ switched songs, and in that little quiet beat, a microphone squealed to life behind me and I heard his voice. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. My whole body knew it like a muscle memory you wish you didn't have. "I just need a minute," he said, and the room went very still in the way people go still when they're trying to be polite about something they already hate. I don't know if it was Luke or the DJ who moved faster. 1 second Jake was standing at the edge of the dance floor in a suit I'd ironed 100 times before, clutching a little gift bag like a prop in a bad play, and the next second Luke had his hand over the top of the mic and was saying, very calmly, "Not tonight, man." The security guy I'd seen earlier materialized from nowhere. There wasn't a scuffle, no shouting. Jake tried to angle the microphone back toward his mouth and it popped off the stand with a flat little thud. A centerpiece went over, a few stems of white roses skidding like startled fish. That was as dramatic as it got. He looked right at me then, like if he could hold my gaze I'd stop everything and walk to him, and for the first time since all of this started, I didn't feel scared or guilty. I just felt done. He saw it, and his face crumpled in a way that made him look younger than 23. Then he was walking backwards, talking too fast to the security guard, and then outside. Someone made a joke about how the open bar should only be open to people on the seating chart, and it broke the tension like popping a giant bubble. The DJ, bless him, hit a song that made every ant in the room shriek, and half the bridal party dragged me to the dance floor before my hands stopped shaking. Ella squeezed my fingers so hard they went numb and said, "We're okay." And we were. The rest of the night belonged to them. At one point, Luke sang to Ella with his terrible, earnest voice, and everyone booed him affectionately. We did the bridesmaids and groomsmen dance and there were so many people on the floor by then it was impossible to feel like anything was about me. Sam and I spun past each other and bumped shoulders. Maya stole him right after and twirled him until he begged for mercy. Later, while I was fixing my heel with a band-aid in the hallway, Ella's dad sat beside me and told me I was brave in a way that didn't make me feel like a soldier, just like a person who'd chosen herself in a room full of people choosing love. I know how corny that sounds. It was corny, and I loved it. When I finally checked my phone at the end of the night, there was a long text from Jake and a missed call from an unknown number. I didn't open the text. I blocked the number. I sent a group message to my landlord and flatmates asking not to buzz anyone and if they weren't expected, and I changed the password we both used to use for silly things, like Netflix. I left the gift bag he'd been carrying with the venue manager. If it was meant for me, it could be unmeant. This morning I woke up to a photo Ella had posted of the two of us the second before we walked down the aisle, foreheads pressed together, hairpins and all. I look happy. Not pretending happy, but the kind that sits low and solid, like a stone in your pocket. Sam sent a message saying, "Maya wants to do brunch with you. I'm invited too but only if I behave," and I laughed out loud in my kitchen. I didn't know what this update would be when I promised I'd come back. I thought it might just be me telling you I survived the awkwardness. Instead, it felt like I got to witness a love story and close a chapter all at once. No fireworks, just boundaries held up cleanly in a room that refused to become a stage for someone else's panic. I'm going to keep choosing the version of me that stood there and didn't move. And now I get to plan a hen weekend debrief with my best friend where the biggest drama is going to be whether we cried more during vows or during the father-daughter dance, which is exactly the kind of boring I've been craving. Update 3. Brunch felt like a movie set they forgot to clear sticky tables, the sound of cutlery like soft rain, sunlight turning the syrup into amber. Maya ordered pancakes the size of hubcaps and stole my toast in plain sight, and Sam did that thing where he talks with his hands and almost launched a fork at a waiter. It was easy in a way that made me suspicious of it at first, like I'd missed a cue. Then Maya leaned over, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear the way girlfriends do when they've decided you're one of theirs, and asked if I was sleeping and eating and remembering to breathe. I told her, mostly in that order, and she clinked her water glass against my coffee cup like we were making a pact. Sam admitted Luke had prepped a code word in case anything got weird. If he said whether, everyone was supposed to pretend the cake had fallen, he said, and then he mimed the most dramatic fake trip I've ever seen while the waiter stood there holding a ketchup bottle like it might explode. It made me laugh so hard my ribs hurt. For a minute I forgot there was anything to be careful about. Halfway through the eggs, my cousin sent a link I didn't tap right away. I knew before I knew. When I finally looked, it was a little square of us from the night before at someone's shaky height, Jake hesitating at the mic, Luke's hand calm and steady over the top of it, and then that line "not tonight," man clear and weirdly kind. The comments were already doing what comments do. I turned the sound off and watched it once more like I was staring at a weather map, trying to see if the storm was moving toward me or away. Maya reached across, flipped my phone face down, and said, "Eat while it's hot," like she was narrating a cooking show and not quietly building me a moat. When we left, Ella rang. The venue manager had found the gift bag in a back room and wanted to hand it to me personally. I didn't want to touch it. Ella offered to pick it up so I wouldn't have to walk back through the building I just decided would only live in my head as light and music. We met at her place with Luke hovering in the kitchen like a sentry in an apron. The bag was just nice enough to make my stomach roll. Heavy paper, fancy ribbon, the kind of thing you use when you want to convince someone the thing inside is important before they even see it. Ella untied the bow while I watched my own hand sit in my lap and not move. There was tissue, and then a small velvet box, and then a folded sheaf of printer paper with my name at the top like a school assignment. No rain yet. Just the box. Luke swore under his breath so gently it sounded like a prayer. Ella held the box between two fingers like it was hot, looked at me, and then put it down unopened. "You don't have to see any of this," she said. I nodded and didn't feel my neck move. The papers were a speech. Not love possession dressed up as a story. Our first listed like inventory, lines that would have sounded sweet to a room that didn't know the last 2 weeks of my life. I felt the oddest urge to laugh because of course he'd written it down, of course he thought it could be rehearsed into being right. We took the whole thing to the station while the coffee Ella had made went cold on her counter. I didn't go to make a scene. I went to have a quiet line of ink somewhere official that said, "Here is what happened and here is what I don't want to happen again." The officer at the desk read, then looked at me like a person and not a problem. He told me what to do if the doorbell rang, who to call if the flowers kept coming, how to keep the weather on my side. He wrote down the incident number in a careful block print that made the whole thing feel oddly gentle. On my way home, I got a text from a number I did recognize, the Simon's sister. She said she was sorry, that she didn't know what she was supposed to do, that he was saying things were misunderstood. I told her I hoped he had someone to talk to and that I wasn't that person. I asked her not to pass messages along anymore. She sent back a single okay, and I saved it like a note you put on a door that says, "Do not disturb, please and thank you." That night, the buzzer went once at 8 and then again at 8:15. "Arsel," the voice said, too close to the mic. My landlord had already updated the list. The camera caught a man with a dozen roses and nerves like a visible thing. It wasn't Jake. It was a courier who looked relieved when I didn't answer. I made tea and watched the tiny red light blink on the intercom until it stopped blinking, like I could will it into being just metal and wire again. I slept on my side with a duvet pulled up to my ear and woke up thinking for a horrible second that I dreamed all of it, the good parts too. Then my phone lit up with a picture from my ear of a trivia teen name scrawled on a scrap of paper. "Not tonight." Team and I laughed into my pillow and texted back 3 crying emojis and 1 lemon because I bought a keychain shaped like one on my way home and clipped my new keys to it. It felt like a joke only I would get. It felt like a little herald of something uncomplicated. Today at lunch, my boss asked if I could stay late on Thursday and I almost said yes without thinking, the old reflex to be useful, to make myself smaller to fit, and then I said I had plans. I didn't yet, but I will. Maybe it'll be trivia where Sam inevitably answers something wrong with incredible confidence and Maya pretends to storm out. Maybe it'll be me on my couch with a wedding slice of packed me, eating frosting with a fork and finally opening the stack of library books by my bed. Maybe I'll take the speech to the shredder and feed it through 1 page at a time until the pile of words is confetti that means nothing to anyone. The ring box went into an evidence bag with a sticker and someone else's handwriting on it. It never opened. There are a dozen parallel universes where last night could have turned into something operatic and sickening. Instead, it was a strange, small series of doors closing softly. A mic turned off. A bow untied and retied around nothing. The best man saying weather and not having to knock over a cake. My friend's husband with his palm calm on a piece of equipment as if he'd been holding it forever. When I picture the wedding now, it's Ella's dress catching on a nail and 3 of us crouching like mechanics to free her. It's Luke's voice cracking mid-vow and him grinning like he meant for it too. It's Maya's hand on my wrist across a plate of eggs. The rest is just weather moving past a window, storm doing what storms do without me standing in it to prove anything. I am tired in the way you are after swimming, that good, heavy tired that makes the bed bruise-shaped and welcoming. I keep thinking about the way I didn't turn around when I heard his voice and how my body knew before my brain did that I didn't have to. I think that might be my new favorite thing about myself. I'm going to keep practicing it. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not again. Update 4. I kept my promise to myself about Thursday. Trivia at the pub around the corner felt like school detention that someone had festooned with fairy lights. The tables were carved into like old trees, hearts and names and declarations that ashes fit, and the barman had the face of a man who's watched 100 first dates bloom and die in the space of 4 songs. Maya smuggled a pen behind her ear like a jewel thief. Sam told us with absolute confidence that the capital of Canada is Toronto, and the team at the next table has Ottawa, at him with the righteous fury of people who have Wikipedia in their bones. Our team name got a little cheer when it was read out loud. Not tonight. Team and I felt something in my chest unclench, the way a bad knot does when you shake it gently instead of yanking. Halfway through round 2, the TV in the corner burped up the clip. No sound, Just the shape of a boy who used to be mine, and a hand landing, firm and kind, on a microphone. The delay on the stream made his mouth open and close like one of those fish with plastic eyes. I looked at it the way you look at distant weather. The barman caught me looking. He flicked the channel to a football map so fast it was like a magic trick. Nobody at our table said anything. Maya pressed her knee to mine onto the table and stole Sam's last chip while maintaining brutal eye contact with him. It made me laugh with my whole face. It was a small sacrament, Christus and quiet and not being watched. The letter from the court came in a fatty brown envelope with my name printed in a font that took itself very seriously. It made a brief life on the hall rug like Post always does in our building, 3 different tenants stepping around it like it might be a trap. I held it in both hands before I opened it, the way you hold a small animal you're not sure is going to bite. Words like without notice and hearing date and respond and make your body do odd things, even when your brain is nodding along like it's just paperwork. I made tea I didn't drink and sent Ella a picture of the envelope next to the lemon keychain, and she sent back a thumbs up and we go together or not at all, which is her default setting. For every room, either of us might walk into. Court is a smell before it is a room polish and something warm, like someone configured the heating badly. The security arch beeped at an old woman with a sewing kit and the guard apologized for making her take out her needles, which made her laugh and tell him she's lived through worse beeps. Ella sat on one side of me and Luke on the other like brackets. When they called my name, my own voice sounded further away than it should have. The judge had a face that didn't move much, which I found wildly comforting. She listened like the whole point of her job was to gather the words and stack them neatly. I read from the paper I'd printed and my hands only shook a little. I said what I needed to in the most boring words I could find, because I decided that being dull in a space that has seen every kind of drama was my rebellion. He was there. I knew before I knew, the same way as at the wedding. It announces itself, that particular awareness. He wasn't 6 foot tall anymore, I don't know if he ever was. He tried to step forward when I finished and the usher put a hand out in front of him like a hinge closing. The judge told him he would have his time and that this was not it. He said he was getting help, that he'd written a statement, that I'd misunderstood him. The judge said, not unkindly, that this wasn't about what he felt, that this was about me being able to go to a party and a shop and my own front door without having to look over my shoulder to see if I was in someone else's story against my will. She made orders that sounded like the sound of doors shutting softly in a corridor. 6 months. Don't attend. Don't contact. Don't ask other people to contact. I nodded like I was in a class and had been given very sensible homework. Afterwards, outside where the air felt cold in the good way, his sister stood with her arms folded into an X and tears dried and crusted at the salt points. We looked at each other like you look at your own reflection in a shop window and decide to be kind to it. She said, thank you, and I said, I know, and we both meant something bigger than the words. She didn't give me anything to pass along. I didn't offer. We walked parallel lines down the pavement and then we didn't anymore. Back at Ella's, we did something that felt indecent. It was so lovely we watched proof prints from the photographer like we were reviewing footage from a space mission that had gone perfectly. Ella in soft focus with the hairpins like small satellites. Luke's eyes at half-mast at the exact second someone uncorked a bottle too enthusiastically behind him. There's one of Sam and me leaning in to share a secret at the exact moment my shoe tried to defect into the lawn. If you didn't know anything, you might read it wrong. But if you do know, you can see the joke sitting between us like a cat pretending it didn't mean to jump on the counter. Maya is in the background of that shot, mid-sip, eyebrow arched to the moon. She saw it over our shoulders and said, absolutely not, in a way that made me wheeze. The gift bag made a new starring appearance without ever actually being in the same room as me again. The officer rang to say they'd logged it in the box and the papers, that I could collect them if I ever wanted to, that I could also not, and I said not, please and thank you. It felt like diffusing a museum exhibit, lovers in a time of terrible ideas. There's a form for everything, even for choosing not to. It made me want to send a thank you card to every administrator who has ever created a tick box. We went candle shopping because Ella decided the flat smelled too much like abstraction. In the third shop, the clerk pulled out a tester that was called after the storm and we both rolled our eyes so hard something in my neck clicked, and then we smelled it anyway. It was wet pavement and laundry and something green. I bought it. Of course I did. I put it on my bookshelf next to a library copy of a novel I'm absolutely not reading from the beginning and the plant I thought I'd murdered but which came back with 2 insane, glossy leaves like it had made its own decision. Sam and Maya came over later, and Luke attempted Nakai like a man who had read one blog post and decided to cosplay as an Italian grandmother. The kitchen filled with steam and swears and small potato dumplings that were either perfect clouds or projectiles, no middle ground. At some point, Maya tugged at my sleeve and held up her hand to show me a ring that looked like somebody had sketched a star and dared a jeweler to make it. I asked him, she said, as if that was the only way it ever could have happened. Sam looked like someone had peer pressured him into breathing, and he was relieved to find it wasn't that hard. They dated on their sofa last night, socks on, takeaway containers on the table, and she said yes with a mouth full of noodles. It made me stupidly happy. Not in the way that feels like your own chest is collapsing. In the way you feel when you've been in the seat too long and you climb out and somebody hands you a towel fresh from the dryer. On my way home, the rain stopped in that embarrassed way it does when it realizes it's overdone it. A busker outside the station played a song I used to claim as mine, and I didn't flinch. In the little newsagent by my building, the cover of a tabloid had a picture from the back of my head, the headline banal and loud. I put it on the counter with a packet of mints, took it back upstairs, and then I did something so delicious and petty it felt like taking up a new religion. I cut out Luke's hand on the mic, just that bit, his palm in the base of the stand, and pinned it above my desk with a paperclip. It looks like nothing to anyone else, half a gesture, metal and skin, but it makes me grin every time I walk past it. My tiny saying of not tonight, blessing the day as I put on my shoes. The buzzer didn't ring that night or the night after. The quiet has a texture to it now, like velvet turned the right way. I started a pottery class on a whim that smelled like wet earth and school glue. The teacher walked past my wheel and said, "Center it before you try to make it anything," in a way that made my scalp prickle. My first bowl looked like a very proud mushroom. I carved not tonight into the base with a skewer and then smoothed it out so you would only see it if you went looking. There is an oddness to becoming a person who other people recognize on the train as that girl from the video and then deciding to still go and be a person on a train. At the stop by the river, a woman with a pram caught my eye and said, "Good for you," so lightly it could have floated. I said, "You too," because I don't know anything about her, but she was out here too, with a small person who kept socking himself in the cheek and laughing at the audacity of his own hand. Friday afternoon, my boss asked if I could pick up an extra shift because someone had gone home early, and I heard myself say, "I can't, I've got class," and then I realized I did. It felt like cheating in the opposite direction. I walked to the studio with the rain doing tiny enthusiastic pinpricks on my forehead, the kind of weather that doesn't bother to be dramatic, and I thought about how much of this is just me practicing not turning around. Practicing softness without apology. Practicing the part where ordinary isn't the consolation prize, it's the point. I keep the court papers in a drawer with a rubber band around them. I touch them like you touch a bruise to check if it's still there. It is. It hurts less. I don't know what he's doing now. I don't wish him anything bad. I do wish him very, very away. When Ella sent through one last photo late tonight, a candid of me and Maya mid cackle, eyes closed, heads thrown back, it made me wish for 100 tiny, boring futures. Trivia nights where we get capitals right, bowls that get less wonky, the candle burning down to a curved little moon. Weather that behaves itself without me having to stand in it. Not tonight, not anymore, and in the best possible way, not the tiny terrified version of me again. Update 5. I signed a lease under a ceiling full of clocks. The landlord is a woman with an ankle-length braid and the kind of calm that makes you feel like your penmanship is being judged kindly. She collects timepieces, apparently. They ticked like rain on a tin roof while I initialed and dated and tried not to cry on the carbon copy. It's a studio with big east windows and a fireplace that doesn't fire, just sits there with tiles like teeth and lets you put candles in its mouth. When I turned the new key, lemon charm clacking like it was applauding, I said, "Hi," to the empty room, and it felt like it set it back. We moved me with the graceless ballet of people who love you enough to carry the box you swore wasn't that heavy. Ella wore a bandana and bossed traffic like a foreman. Luke flipped a dolly on Dad's side once and then pretended he'd Matt too. Maya labeled boxes in handwriting so neat it looked forged. Books, bowls, shoes I forgot I own, live plants maybe, and once, in the middle of a cardboard flap, "Not tonight," because she said, "If you can't make a house joke when you're making a house, when can you?" Sam wedged himself into the lift with a lampshade on his head and announced that at last he had found his true calling. The man in flat threed clapped when the doors opened, like we were bussers. On the second trip, Ella found a parking ticket under my passenger seat from a parallel park job I maintain was a moral victory even if the city disagreed. She held it up like a tiny flag. "Full circle," she said, and I groaned, and then we stuck it to the fridge at the new place with a magnet shaped like a peach just to prove to ourselves that some kinds of shame can be ornamental. First night, the lights went. Not metaphorically. The actual kind where the hum of the building drops out and you hear your own voice in your head go, "Oh." Somewhere outside, something boomed like a drum with a hole in it. Then the building turned into a different animal. Doors opened. Socks on wood. Someone laughed in surprise at their own shadow. The emergency lights ate themselves to a brave little red mouth over the stairwell sign and then gave up. I found the after the storm candle in the matchbox with a rude cartoon I'd nicked from a restaurant years ago. The room went golden cave-like. Then a knock, and then another, a polite chorus. "You get?" Voice asked through the wood. When I opened, the corridor was a procession, Threeb with a string of battery fairy lights already around his neck like pearls, Threek with a bulldog named Lemon who snorted like a fax machine and immediately pressed her whole face into my shin, the guy from Tua who works nights and brought a portable speaker and a bag of crisps he called an offering to the gods of salt. The barman from the pub was there in a hoodie, carrying 3 tea lights and the lid of a quality street tin like some medieval relic. "Power went out right after I poured someone's Guinness," he said, mournful and impressed at the same time. "They're probably still waiting for the settle." We sat on the hallway floor in a stripe of candlelight like we were rehearsing being a community and accidentally nailed it on the first try. Someone told a ghost story about the lift that ended in Lemon farting with operatic timing. Chua cued a playlist of songs that don't need electricity to make you feel like the lights are on. I could see my own door from the floor and it looked patient. Maya texted a picture from the stairs of Sam holding a flashlight in his mouth and tying a knot in an extension cord like he was defusing a bomb that only powered a toaster. I sent back a photo of Lemon's tongue in the tiny saint hand of Luke pinned over my desk glowing in candlelight like it had been waiting its whole life for low voltage. When the power snapped back it did it sheepishly, lamps blinking awake one at a time like a row of children who know they're late. We all cheered and then immediately scattered to plug phones in as if we'd been through a siege. Before he disappeared, Threeb tapped my doorframe with one knuckle like it was wood on a stage. "Welcome," he said. It landed in my ribs like a warm thing. The next morning, there was an email offering me a job I'd applied to 2 months ago and almost talked myself out of. Library assistant, 3 days a week, a little glass-walled reading room that smells like dust in someone's good wool coat, a stack of holds that feels like Christmas morning in barcode form. I read it 3 times and then called the number and tried to sound like a person who has worn sensible shoes her entire life and not like somebody whose current sensible shoes still have the tags on. "We liked your cover letter," the woman said, and I nearly told her I'd written it at my kitchen table between mouthfuls of leftover wedding cake, but I didn't. I said, "Thank you, and yes, and I can start on Monday," and then I lay down on the floor with my hair making a bad crown around my head and laughed until it got stuck in my mouth a little. Alice said we were celebrating whether I'd liked it or not. The pub drew a chalk star next to "Not Tonight" team on the board and the barman put a plate of chips down with the solemnity of a christening. We planned a tiny engagement due for Sam and Maya at the end of the month, and Maya showed me their save the date which says, in block letters, she asked, he said yes, obviously, and a doodle of 2 socks on a sofa with faces. Luke, with his terrible, perfect singing voice, volunteered to learn exactly 1 song he will do exactly once, and the barman promised to turn the telly off if any weather decided to air itself again in public. The photographer texted to say our prints were ready. In his little studio that smells like developer and cardstock, he slid an envelope across like a secret and said, "I put something extra in." It was a 5x7 of the moment the hand hit the mic, only cropped in such a way that it could be about anything: a palm, steady, the suggestion of sound about to stop, the edge of a suit sleeve. It's stupid how soft my chest went. I took it home and painted above the desk next to the cutout so now it looks like a diptych, St. Palm and half a microphone, patron saints of Get a Grip. At the pottery studio, the kiln gods were kind. My proud mushroom came out less proud and more bowl. The carved words on the bottom are there if you hunt for them, not tonight, tucked like a secret I don't have to keep. "You found center," the teacher said, passing it to me with both hands, and for a second I wanted to cry in the way you cry when something small and silly and exact lands right at your feet like a coin. On the walk home, the air did that clear, post-storm shimmy where even the buses look like they've been rinsed. Outside the station, the busker was playing a song I didn't have a story pinned to anymore. I dropped a coin and it made that satisfying clink that sound, like a plot point admitting it was a background noise all along. A woman pushing a pram, the same one from the train, maybe not, caught my eye and did a little nod like, "Hello, fellow human, excellent work existing." I nodded back like, "You too." Back upstairs, I put the bowl on the shelf, lit the after the storm candle because I'll be an absolute click if I want to be, and pressed the library acceptance email with a magnet under the old parking ticket. Then I lay on the rug and stared at my ceiling in the absence of clocks and thought about how much of my life right now feels like someone opened a window. There's nothing cinematic about it, no crescendo, no lessons written in skywriting. Just ordinary light, quiet working electricity, Neighbors who bring Christmas, a job where I get to put spines in order and hand somebody a book they forgot they needed, a future party where a man I've known since he was a boy will sing badly on purpose for love, and the certainty that if anything tries to turn the room into a stage again, there are a dozen hands ready to land gently and say, "Not tonight." I'm learning the choreography of days that don't ask me to look over my shoulder to see who's narrating. He's on a ring. Soup in a pot. Clay under my nails and the faint smell of rain in the curtains. Lemon, the bulldog, snoring like a printer with a paper jam somewhere upstairs. My own door shutting with an exact little click I can feel in my teeth. I keep not turning around. It keeps working.